Now on BBC Two, Chris Searle harks back to some memorable programmes on the theme of art in Windmill.
Welcome to Windmill. Now, painting by numbers. I have at last found out the secret of how to leave Picasso and Rembrandt at the starting gate. Those so-called artists could have been really successful if only they'd had my instant painting by numbers kit. Number 1, put the brush in the paint. Number 2, brush the paint on the paper. Number 3, do it again. And there you are, in living colour, a picture. What's more, it moves. Of course it moves. They told me I was no oil painting, but I am, in my own way, a work of art. I must be. That so-called artist just painted me. And art just happens to be the frame in which we've hung this week's selection from the very best of television. We've dusted off some real treasures from the BBC's library shelves, especially for you. And sometimes it's a job to tell if something is art or not. I mean, what about this chap? Is he the driver of a steam engine or an eminent sculptor? This is certainly an artist, Tony Hart, and he's one of our star guests. Our other guest is the man behind Rhubarb and Henry's cat, Bob Godfrey.
A, E, I, O, U, M, and V like this, and P like this, L like this, F like this, U like that. I think that's about the... Oh, and all the rest that I haven't covered are like this.
Pete and Dud discuss art, particularly duck art.
We've done ducks in all positions, you know. Ducks in the morning, ducks in the morning, ducks in the evening, ducks in the summertime.
And we'll see one artist's plan to wrap up the biggest parcel in the world. All that and more coming up. Now, one good thing about art is you don't have to do A-level or spend all your time in art galleries to appreciate it. Even young children get a taste for it without even realizing it. I mean, books like this one, The Church Mouse by Graham Oakley, can surprise you with the quality of their illustrations. It's all about a lonely church mouse whose only friend is the church cat. Well, the simple idea of a story well told with just a few pictures and a little music is how Jackanory was invented. Here's the same story read by Griff Rhys-Jones.
In a busy little town, not very far away, there was a church. And in the church lived a mouse whose name was Arthur. Arthur liked living in a church. For one thing, he was very fond of music, particularly if it was loud. Also, if the verger had filled the font, he could go and mess about in his boat or practice the crawl if the weather was warm enough. There were many advantages to living the luxurious life of a church mouse, but Arthur liked it best because it was safe. And he did have a rather special companion. Samson, the church cat, had listened to so many sermons about the meek being blessed and everybody really being brothers that he'd grown quite frighteningly meek and treated Arthur just like a brother. But sometimes Arthur got a bit depressed. One reason for this was his diet. All he ever had to eat were the sweets the boys dropped during choir practice. You might say that it wouldn't make you depressed, but you're not a mouse. It made Arthur fat and bilious, and it didn't do his teeth any good either. But worst of all, he was lonely, for in the whole of that church, There was not one other mouse. And when he felt like having a chat, Samson always seemed to be having one of his day-long naps. Then one afternoon, when Arthur was reading, an idea popped into his head. And after checking it with the parson, he rushed out of the church and into the town to put his idea into practice. He almost gave up his idea, but then he thought, if it's always as nasty as this, everybody's bound to agree to my plan. So he hurried on, and only paused once all the rest of the way.
Children also paint for themselves, and just occasionally a child prodigy will take the art world by surprise. In 1967, Lewis Lyons, aged 5, managed to get into the Royal Academy's summer exhibition. Now, it was such a sensation, Leonard Parkin made a film of it for the 24 Hours programme.
This is the boy who, at the age of 5, has become the youngest artist ever to have a picture accepted for exhibition by the Royal Academy. Landseer managed it at 13 in 1815, and Millet in 1846 when he was 17. But until this 5-year-old painted his way to an early flicker of fame, the Academy had had only 4 exhibitors under 21 in its history. The picture, which Lewis painted when he was 3, and which was accepted anonymously by the wise old heads on the Academy Selection Committee, is called Trees and Monkeys, inspired by a day at the zoo. One simple picture, which, let's face it, looks little more than a pattern of black and grey blobs and scrawls, has put this bright little 5-year-old in danger of being regarded as a prodigy. Today he came to Burlington House to see his own work and some of the works by his distinguished contemporaries, who are not attracting as much publicity.
And publicity is right. Even the Times printed Lewis's picture, upside down, admittedly, but they printed it. Now, when Lewis's dad complained, the explanation was, I saw one monkey when it was, as it transpired, upside down, and no monkeys when it was the other way up. Well, one reader wrote to say, I like it better sideways. Well, that's the big problem for artists. Nobody appreciates them. It doesn't stop them trying, though. That Royal Academy exhibition gets 15,000 hopeful entries every year from all over the country, and only 1 in 10 gets accepted by the hanging committee. Will they hang your painting, or won't they? Well, before you find out, you've got to get it into them and show it to them, and that's easier said than done.
On the way up from Taunton, the draftsman's minibus has broken down twice, but he's finally made it to the Academy.
No, you can't come here, so it's around the back in Burlington Gardens. Very sorry. How to get there? Yes, well, you've got to go outside this gate, right? You turn left. You got the top of Via Piccadilly there. You turn around to Regent Street. The second traffic lights.
Oh, Chief, what are you doing here?
I'm trying to get to the Royal Academy. I got to the front, and they told me I was going to go to the back. Yes, I realised that, but I can't unload the paintings here.
Well, can't they let you in here?
They've let me in there, and they've turned me out again.
Do you know the way around the outside?
He gave me instructions, but your guess is as good as mine. There's police stations and lefts and rights.
There's a back entrance, but it's all one-way streets.
If you go around there, you come to the back of the National Ethnographic Museum, the Museum of Mankind, and that runs through. You can go directly through.
Sorry, you can't bring that on here. Take it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, don't know where the back of the Royal Academy is, do you?
The back of it?
Let's go. I don't think it.
If you find it, give us a shout.
You're looking for the Royal Academy as well, are you?
Well, we passed the damn thing once.
Eventually, once you've negotiated your way round the bollards and the commissionaires and the misdirections, there's another far worse obstacle, the hanging committee and the chalk. An X on the back means no. And as Brian Parsons, the man with the dented minibus and the dented ego, found, they're awfully hard to please, these art experts.
No. 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 Sky stick? No.
For a painting to get through, it has to earn 3 votes.
Oh, Lord.
No.
Nude?
Brian Parsons' nude goes out, then come his other 2.
Oh, Coke tins. Anybody in favour of Coke tins? Not really. How about the grass coming up?
2 down, only the grass to go.
Not for those flowers. No, I thought that had gone, sorry. I'm for grass.
D means it's made it. Strange though it is, D stands for doubtful, but it means they've got through to the next stage.
Mr. Parsons got one of his paintings, the grass painting, into the summer show, and then he and his family had the ordeal of seeing if anybody would buy it.
Can you see it?
It's got a red spot on it.
Yeah, I'll give you one. You sold it. Terrific.
That's gone quick, hasn't it?
Oh, congratulations. Oh, congratulations. And that's the... Like a level.
75.
75?
I think so.
75? Definitely extra pocket money. Definitely.
So it was worth all the hassle after all. Art doesn't have to be flat. It can be a 3-dimensional sculpture. This one is by Nicola Godden. And it needn't be of anything in particular. Here's an abstract shape, a marvellous one, sculpted by Brian Neal. But there are some sculptors who like to see things move. Jean Tinguely spends months assembling huge, carefully engineered pieces of machinery, which don't do anything useful. They just whirl and clank, and they're a lot of fun to look at.
Tinguely is a man of great courage. His ideas demand the kind of bravery needed for his day-to-day work. His handling of machinery and power supplies would give a factory inspector nightmares.
About Windmill is that sometimes the film and tape library comes up with a real surprise. The artist L.S. Lowry was best known for painting pictures of England, not trees and skies, but the industrial landscape of places like his hometown, Manchester. And his houses and factories and matchstick men have become world famous. In 1978, a song about L.S. Lowry went to #1 in the charts, and this gem from the library is the result of putting the two together, the paintings and the song.
He painted Salford smoky tops on cardboard boxes from the shops and parts of Ancoats where I used to play. I'm sure he once walked down our street 'cause he painted kids who had out on the feet. The clothes they wore had all seen better days. Now they said his works of art were dull, no room, all that the walls are full. But Lowry didn't care much anyway. They said he just paints cats and dogs and matched up men in boots and clogs. And Lowry said that's just the way they'll stay. And he painted matched up men and matched up cats and dogs. He painted kids on the corner of the street that were sparking clogs. Now he takes his brush and he waits outside them factory gates to paint his matched up men and matched up cats and dogs. Now canvas and brushes were wearing thin when London started calling him to come on down and wear the old flat cap. They said, tell us all about your ways and all about them Salford days. Is it true you're just an ordinary chap? And he painted matched up men and matched up cats and dogs. He painted kids on the corner of the street that were sparking clogs. Now he takes his brush and he waits outside them factory gates to paint his matched up men and matched up cats and dogs. Now Lowry's hung upon the wall beside the greatest of them all, and even the Mona Lisa takes a bow. This tired old man with hair like snow told northern folk it's time to go. The fever came and the good Lord mopped his brow.
The paintings of L.S. Lowry and the music of Brian and Michael. Lowry's sell for thousands of pounds. History doesn't relate what happened to Brian and Michael. Pete and Dud, on the other hand, Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, have just managed to survive in the Windmill Road Library. One of the few remaining programmes from the series, not only but also, finds the two intellectual giants sheltering from the rain to eat their sandwiches in an art gallery. One of the painters they discuss in depth is Vernon Ward. That's a Vernon Ward. He painted a lot of ducks. That's for your information. Here are Pete and Dud.
Here, I have a sandwich. My feet are killing me. What's that got to do with a sandwich? Nothing, I just said it afterwards, that's all. Well, you shouldn't say things like that together. It could confuse a stupid person. Yeah. You know, Pete, I reckon there's a lot of rubbish in this gallery, you know. Yeah. Well, not only rubbish, Dad, there's a lot of muck about. Yeah. I've been looking all over the place for something good. You know, but what I can't understand, frankly, Pete, is that there's not a Vernon Ward gallery in here. There's not a duck in the building. There's no Peter Scott, there's no Vernon Ward, not a duck to be seen. Nothing. No, and the marvellous thing about Vernon Ward is, of course, he's been doing ducks all his life. Well, he's done more ducks than you've had hot breakfast done. Vernon Ward, he's done plenty of ducks. If he's done anything, he's done ducks. Yeah. He's done ducks in all positions. Yeah. Ducks in the morning, ducks in the morning, ducks in the evening, ducks in the summertime. What's that song? That's ducks in the morning, ducks in the evening, ducks in the summertime. Yeah. I thought I recognised it. Of course you did, you said it. Yeah. The thing what makes you know that Vernon Ward is a good painter, if you look at his ducks, have you ever looked at his ducks? Yeah. If you look at his ducks, you see the eyes follow you around the room. Do you notice that? Yeah. If you see 16 of his ducks, you see 32 little eyes following you around the room. No, you only see 16. Because they're flying sideways and you can't see the other eye on the other side. No, but you get the impression, Dad, that the other eye is craning round the beak to look at you, don't you? That's a sign of a good painting, Dad. If the eyes follow you around the room, it's a good painting. If they don't, it isn't. Yeah, it's funny you say that, Pete, because I was in the bathroom the other day. Of course you were, Dad, I remember that. Of course I was, Pete. And I had the feeling of somebody in the room with me, you know. I thought, funny, you know. Bathroom door locked, you know, funny. Somebody in the room with me. Funny, you know. Yeah. Didn't see no one come in. I thought, funny. You know, felt these eyes burning in the back of my head. Funny, you know. So, I whip round like a flash. I see the bloody laughing cavalier up there, having a giggle. I said, yeah, I felt so embarrassed, you know. You would, yeah. So I went out the bathroom and I went across to Mrs. Connolly's across the road and asked if I could use her toilet. Yeah. Because, you know, you feel a bit daft with somebody looking at the back of you. Yeah. She's all right, though, because she's only got a bowl of pansies in her toilet. A real bowl of pansies or a painting, Dad? Real painting, Pete. Oh, another thing we've wasted money on is that bloody Cézanne, Grande Baigneurs. Yeah. Have you seen that load of rubbish? No. It's over there. Oh, yeah. There it is, those fat nude ladies with their bottoms towards you. Yeah. That's Les Grandes Baigneurs. You know what it means, don't you? What's it? Big bathers. Is that all? That's all it means, yeah. Big bathers. 500,000 quid we pay for that. Those nude women come out of our pocket, Dad. Yeah. Works out about £50,000 a body, doesn't it? Well, you could get the real nude ladies over there for that price. Yeah. My Aunt Dolly would have done it for nothing. She does anything for nothing, doesn't she, Aunt Dolly? Yeah. Filthy old cow. You enjoying that sandwich? Mine's appalling, I'll tell you that much. Worse than the paintings, my sandwich. Yeah. You know, Pete.
Once in a while, the newspapers get really worked up about millions of pounds of taxpayers' money being spent on art. In 1965, it was those fat nude ladies with their bottoms towards you. In 1977, it was the Tate Gallery bricks, a sculpture by Carl Andre. It really was just a neatly laid out stack of bricks. The art world, in the person of a New York critic, was convinced its creator was a gifted and serious artist. In fact, little short of a genius was how he described him. Old Fife Robertson, in his tweed hat in one of his programs called Robbie, tried to sort out what art is and what it isn't, and reached his own wonderfully crusty verdict.
The Hayward Gallery lunacies have been called non-art, but I think they're much worse than that. They're phony art. You can condense these two words into one, which is the proper flavor of contemptuous derision. P-H-A-R-T. For the public, fart began a few years ago with the famous bricks at the Tate Gallery. We ought to be grateful to the experts of the Tate Gallery for the loving care, for the caring care with which they have assembled these remarkable bricks. You might think in your innocence that you could lay them down anywhere, but not so. The American sculpture genius who fathered this carefully numbered each brick. The genius who, it's rumored, for a mere £1,000 suffered for our sake the agony of parting with a unique creation. Not just once. This is his 8th work in brick.
Well, you can be sure of one thing. The man who made that pile of bricks couldn't care less what Robbie or anyone else thinks of his work. There's also more to the Tate Gallery than bricks. There's another far battier artist at loose who's more likely to have his work shown all over the outside of the Tate Gallery than in it. And he cares a lot what people think. The more people tell him to stop, the more determined he gets. It's the wild Bulgarian Hristo Yavashev I'm talking about. He's the one who wraps up buildings, bridges, islands, anything, in plastic sheeting. The bit he likes best is arguing with the local authorities and persuading them to let him wrap things up. He often gets his way. And when he does, like when he wanted to make a parcel of some of the coast of Australia, the results are spectacular. But as you'll see in this bit of a review program, local authorities are one thing, nature is another.
Norman! Norman! Pull it over there! Come on. Yeah! Pull up. So, John, you understand we must spread the material very carefully. It's overlapped. Look, woman, come here, in that direction. The rope is already there, but we must put the Ramset gun, Ramset point, to protect the wind don't come on the fabric.
Even Hristo makes no attempt to argue with nature. A freak wind was forecast. All that could be done was to fix more ropes and then just wait. Winds of 100 miles an hour, virtually unknown in the Sydney area, ripped the plastic into shreds. It looked as if Hristo would have to abandon the project. Money and materials were low, and the hundreds of eager student helpers had now dwindled to a mere handful. Hristo refused well-meaning suggestions that he should make do with covering only half the original site. It must be all or nothing. He sold everything he could to buy more materials and labor, and a few weeks later, the wrap-up was complete. Such spirit appealed to the Australians, and over the next 2 months, thousands of Hristo's critics could be seen picnicking on the plastic cliffs. Then, after 2 months, the rocks were unwrapped, and Hristo left for home and his next project, a plastic curtain 1,000 feet high across a canyon 1 mile wide.
Television programs tend to be about things that move. It'd be a waste of all that technology if all you've got was still photographs and paintings. So it's hardly surprising that the library is rich in art that moves. Animation is the art of fooling people into thinking that a set of still pictures, if you show them in quick succession, look like movement. I mean, that's all a film is, a set of stills which you run at speed through a projector. The reason you think it's continuous action is that we all have the ability to store the previous picture in our minds just for a fraction of a second, while the projector closes the shutter, pulls down the next one, opens the shutter, and flashes it on the screen. It's called persistence of vision, and people were able to demonstrate its effect long before films were invented. This is a zoetrope. A zoetrope is Greek for wheel of life. It was designed in Bristol as long ago as 1834. Inside the drum, there's a set of pictures, and there are slots cut round the rim. Now, if you spin the drum and look through the slots work like the projector shutter and flash one picture at a time into your eye. Persistence of vision makes it look like continuous action. Well, then came photography. A man called Edward Muybridge bet that when a horse trots, its feet never leave the ground all at once. It always kept something in contact with the ground. To prove it, he set up a row of cameras. Now, as the horse went past the cameras, it triggered each one in turn, and the result is a series of photographs. There you are, photographs of a horse in action. And 100 years later, the photographs were put together and made into a film. And it turned out that Edward Muybridge had made a set of films in the 1870s without even realizing it. In some of these shots, you can even see where the trigger wires for the cameras were positioned. And you can also see that he lost his bet. A trotting horse does leave the ground with all four hooves at once. Here's another bit of animation, and you can do this yourself. Draw a set of pictures on stiffish paper, each one slightly different from the other. Clamp them together. I'm just going to hold them together with my thumb and finger here. Flip through them and see what happens. Look at that. Hooray! Wave the flag. Isn't that nice? Oh, lovely. Well, that's exactly what film animation is, and it's the subject of this week's look inside the box, the bit behind the slots at the back of the set. Our guest and guide to the world of animation has won Oscars, BAFTA awards. He's even made a little bit of money, he told me, creating characters like Rhubarb the dog and Henry's cat. It's Bob Godfrey. Welcome, Bob. How did you first get into this wonderful, magical world of animation?
I started as a background artist, and then when I saw that people were moving about all over my scenery, I used to have a very dim view of that. So I became a foreground artist, really.
I never looked back. For you, what's the magic of it?
Oh, the magic is that you can get right inside a character, and I mean, we only really deal in the impossible. You know, if it's possible, let the live-action boys do it, or the television boys do it. I mean, we deal in miracles, you see. It's got to be impossible before we take it on.
Right, yes, I suppose the sky's the limit, isn't it?
Yeah, the sky's the limit. Yes. It's absolutely no limitations at all. It's rather scary.
Now, at the very beginning of this programme, we saw a picture of you for some weird reason saying A, E, I, O, U. I guess that was something to do with animation, but what's the next step from that?
Well, it's called lip synchronization, where we actually synchronize to the voice on the track, and we have to have these basic mouth movements, and there I put an A and an E. It's like that. I put the man in profile. It's easier to demonstrate the mouth. I, O becomes O, and then U is there. See, or you get the U down there when the mouth sort of goes into a sort of position like that, and then we've got F, where the teeth come out over the top of the Chris Rabbit mouth, and then the celebrated L, which is sort of the teeth like that, and the tongue actually sort of love, you see. So that's the L mouth. So they are the basic mouth positions.
Right, and obviously the next stage is to draw lots and lots of pictures which together make a continuous flow of movement. Now, we've got a clip from one of your marvellous do-it-yourself animation shows where you bravely, I thought, blew the gaff on the whole subject. You told everybody how films are made, and this is a very nice moment from there.
I've done my drawings. I'm now going to shoot them on the camera.
Now, how many exposures are we going to give this frame? Well, we can sort our camera sheet. I think we're going to give this first drawing. In fact, we're going to do all the drawings in this sequence, 2 frames each. Right? Boom, boom. Take it off, put it over there. Be nice and methodical, you know. Now, tick off the frames that you've taken. Happy is the man who has a frame counter, for he knoweth his place in the film. Okay? Right. Number 2 drawing on. Boom, boom. Simple, you see? And with a bit of luck, you might get a result, something like this.
As Rhubarb reached the shade, he stood for a while, as all great dogs do before embarking up the wrong tree. Climbing gingerly into the seat of the swing, Rhubarb checked all his equipment.
Flaps, spike, springs, all okay.
Quietly at first, Rhubarb started to make the noise of the holiday jets that fly over the garden on sunny days, the sound he'd perfected during the night. As the sound got louder, he gently lifted his legs off the ground.
Springs up, we have lift off,
shouted Rhubarb in a muffled tone from under his huge yellow spike.
This is a great step for dog kind.
And as the wind whistled past his eyes and his little arms flapped with fury, Rhubarb felt himself being lifted higher and higher into the world beyond the 4 paws of dog. Rhubarb was so excited that he was the first dog ever to enter into flight, that he forgot to flap his cardboard wings. And so with the piercing scream of a jet changing into the screaming pierce of a dog, he plunged towards the garden. And his big yellow spike plonked into the green turf and into rubber band land. An hour later, poor Rhubarb was still furious as all the birds for miles about came bouncing along on their springs. And even Custard, the big fat cat from next door, came to laugh. Rhubarb was stuck. Birds have beaks, and Rhubarb had a spike. And a beak is a beak, and a spike is a spike.
Well, there you've moved from Rhubarb onto Henry's cat now, another marvellous character. Where did the character come from?
Well, he's based, he's the cat belonging to a man Stan and I did in Henry 9 till 5, and this is his cat.
Right. Is it based on any particular cat that you know
Well,
of?
there's sort of, I've got a cat and Stan's got a cat, we like cats. And he's very feline, actually. I mean, he's very lazy, he sits in front of the telly all day, and he loves eating all the time.
But his voice, this is Henry's cat, the yellow one on the
Yes, he's a
left,
pretty
right.
sort of laid-back sort of character.
Unusual being yellow?
Yes, he's in yellow, and of course old Chris there's blue with the buck teeth.
You do the voices for this
Yes,
program,
I do the
you?
voices, and oh, it's a heck of a lot of voices. I'd sort of borrowed it from, then all the voices are borrowed from somewhere or the other. I borrowed it from Richard Bryce, who did Custard in you know, Rhubarb and Custard, the horrible big pink cat next door. And he had this and so I thought that's the way a cat would talk, really.
Is this part of your creative process for making Henry's cat? Do you have to fill in every one with colour each time?
Oh yes, yeah, they're all how to be coloured in, and maybe the artist, the animator, wouldn't do it. It goes away to somebody else who colours it in. But they all have to be coloured, and backgrounds have to be drawn every time.
How long does it take to make each programme?
About 3 weeks for a 5-minuter and 9 weeks for a 15-minuter.
That's with how many people working at the same
About
time?
3 animators and various assistants cutting out and sticking down, and then we've got editors and all the other people that normally go into filmmaking. So we have, you know, quite a little team working away.
We've got a wonderful bit of Henry's cat coming up in which he decides to enter a painting competition. I know you've brought some of the bits with you, the actual artwork that was part of the creative process.
Yes.
Where does it all start?
Well, it starts on the storyboard here, you see, and that particular section is here, where he's put all the glasses on in one last attempt to see the world as artists see the world. So he puts all these glasses on, and then, of course, he can't see anything. He falls over the Bill Poster's bucket. And I've got the progression of animation here, you see. I would put it on these peg barbers, I suppose, to save time. I can sort of... there is a walk cycle Henry's cat going along. You'll notice there's no, he doesn't, he walks on the spot like Marcel Marceau, you know, there's no background moving along. So there he is putting all the glasses on, and he goes off on his walk, and then he stumbles and falls into the billposter's bucket. So that is, it takes those drawings to just make him walk along.
That's a lot of work for
just
very, very few seconds. I mean, that little pile represents about 2 seconds of screen time or something.
That's right, it takes about an afternoon to do it.
Marvellous. But the result
the fun of seeing it on the video scanner is great.
Magic. Yeah. Let's see it now.
He saw a poster being put up advertising a painting exhibition at the local gallery. Then he remembered the artists in the park and realised why they had been there. They had been working for the exhibition, of course.
Perhaps I should go along and learn something,
thought Henry's cat. In one last attempt to see the world differently, he put on all his spectacles at once and set off for the gallery. And what do you think he saw? Absolutely nothing. But he did knock over a billposter's bucket, which had been left there while the billposter had gone for a cup of tea. He slipped into the paste, fell into all the posters, and got covered all over with paper. Well, he was so exhausted from struggling, he leaned back against the wall to take a rest. But when he tried to move again, he discovered he was completely stuck.
Oh, here comes some help,
thought Henry's cat. But was it? No, it was the painters from the park bringing their work to the exhibition. They were led by a famous French artist.
What is this?
He said, looking Henry's cat up and down.
It is a new style. We use the paintbrush and the canvas, but vous is the paintbrush and the canvas. C'est magnifique.
And they all stood back and watched Henry's cat struggle to free himself.
Ah, you give the painting life,
said the famous French artist.
C'est la vie.
But it needs developing, of course. And with that, he kissed Henry's cat on both cheeks and led the other artists into the gallery.
Well,
thought Henry's cat,
I may not have much of a style, but I guess I'm stuck with it.
He's lovely, Henry's cat. Well, thank you very much. Are we going to see more programmes?
Oh, yes, we've got 6 15-minuters coming up in the new year.
Fabulous.
And we've got the old series coming on again Saturday morning, Superstore. So
great.
He's on the air.
Lots of Bob Godfrey cartoons coming up. That's nice to hear. Thank you very much for joining us, Bob.
Thank you.
Film is now reckoned to be an art form in its own right, and I suppose as every single frame of film in the library has been thought about carefully by whoever shot it, we could almost pick a bit at random. As it happens, there's a film about windmills, and it's one of the earliest colour films shown on BBC television. It was made on Ektachrome, and it's just beautiful. We've selected some sequences from it and put them with some music, and the result? Here it is, The Windmill. John Williams' record, The River God. Now, there's a man who's been gracing our television screens with charm and style for 33 years. He's been turning the oddest bits and pieces into art for children ever since. If I say program titles like Take Heart and Heartbeat, you know immediately I'm talking about Tony Hart. Welcome to Windmill, Tony.
Thank you very much.
How did you start in the art world?
Oh, I started because I came back from India, where I'd been in the army, couldn't do very much academically, went to art school, did all the usual things there, came to London, worked in a commercial studio, went freelance, and by sheer good fortune just dropped into working for television.
Just at the right time?
Well, it was for me, yes, absolutely.
Marvellous. And one of the skills you have that I know everybody admires is your ability to draw quickly. Now, how on earth do you manage to draw things so fast? Is it just practice?
Yes, I expect it is, but when I was working in a display studio, which I did at the beginning of my professional career, you had to get stuff done extraordinarily quickly. And really and truly, I think people preferred it if you were able to get the stuff done on time or even before they wanted it adequately, rather than being the best thing in the world too late. And so that business of working to time has become very, very important.
Right, well, we've got a lovely, very early example from a program called Playboy.
I remember it well.
Right.
And as soon as you recognize or identify the animals that I'm trying to draw for you, shoot up your hand so that Eamon will see which one of you to award the mark. As he said, the mark, we're not going to count with marks now, because this is just a bit of fun. But, so, all of you, set, off we go. First feet. Oh, that's good, isn't it?
Whales were up first.
No.
Then some.
Elephant?
My goodness, you Welsh people, that was absolutely splendid. Of course it is, yes. There
Must be
you
a
are.
Welsh elephant.
Let's just quickly do it so that everybody will know. There you are. A very odd elephant it is too.
Great. Nothing odd about that elephant at all. It's a great elephant.
Something odd about the hair.
What happened?
I don't know. Do you know, I always thought I was fair. I seem to be extraordinarily dark of head there.
Very dark head in that, yes. That's the phenomenon of black and white television. Can you draw any animal to order?
Hopefully. What have you in mind?
Can I test you on one?
Yes.
I'll try one. Draw, please, a giraffe.
Oh, well, that's not too bad. Very supercilious looking giraffes. You're having to see this upside down, Chris, aren't you?
Well, I can see a picture of it alongside us there.
Ah, well, there you are. I was in Africa year before last, and I think one of the most delightful things was watching giraffes at dusk.
Oh, yes.
They, this particular one, as it got darker and darker, the sort of twilight, you could only see his little white face high, high up, and his little white socks low, low down, just crossing the bush.
What a nice giraffe. Not supercilious at all. It's a very friendly giraffe.
Yes, I think he is. Yes, bit bandy.
A lot of programs you've made have been for deaf children.
Oh, yes.
Why did you move into that area particularly?
I think you remember we were talking about quickness of drawing. Well, deaf children like a lot of action, a lot of graphic stuff that they can see. They don't want a lot of chat, obviously. And because I did draw quickly, I got invited in to do quite a lot of work for programs for the deaf children.
And everybody likes the spectacular too, and I remember your pictures drawn on, it must be an airfield, huge expanses of concrete.
That's absolutely
with
right.
With one of those things you push along to mark tennis courts.
Exactly.
Marvellous.
Filled with white paint.
Gosh, how do you do those? Do you pencil them out first?
Well, you could hardly pencil out an airfield, could you? No. What you do is the camera looks down onto the place that you're going to make your picture. He can then say, move out to the top left, right, put a stone down or a flower or something. Now move over to the other side. You do this until you've got the 4 places. But what looks like the television rectangle is really something that looks like that, because you've got this distortion, you see. But then, of course, you're on your own.
Well, there's the tennis court marker. Which is it just an ordinary one?
No, it was made for us.
Oh.
Right here.
Really?
Right here, yes.
Television centre?
Yeah. It has a tap, and we mix up the sort of whitewash have to get it just the right consistency so that it doesn't block, but doesn't pour out to be so liquid.
Yes,
And,
because it hasn't got a little wheel, it's just running out of the bottom.
Exactly,
from a pipe.
yes, from a tap. In fact, I remember they put one of these bicycle brakes on so that I could regulate the tap.
Oh, yes. And there's another elephant.
It is indeed.
Sitting down this time.
Almost recognisable, too.
Oops, there goes Tony, there's a little eye.
And that I shall never
tremendous.
forget.
What a clever trick. How on earth did you do that?
Animation.
Animation.
Mm.
You have the knack of finding bits and pieces lying around and making things with them. What sort of things? I know we're going to look at one with a bath plug chain in a moment, but what other things have you found lying around? How did you enjoy
The reason for this was because you run out of ideas of things to use, and you have to keep trying to find something different. And I have a sort of liking for dead things. Now, I put this better. I don't mean dead mice or things like that. I mean wood, anything that has been worked on by weather. And I make collections of them, wood and stone, all manner of junk like that. And these are lovely because anybody can go and find bits and pieces like that, broken tiles and things. Bring them back and simply play with them. Simply play with them, just like your housewife moves things on the mantelpiece until she is satisfied with how she's got it. You see? Composition. And then having made a composition, you might think that's fine just as it is. Or you might say, well, this, if I do that, it looks like something else. And so you've then made a collage which is recognizable as something else.
This marvellous sequence then with the bath plug chain where you make faces just by moving the chain around on a flat surface. How much did you have to think about it in advance? Did you say, well, we'll have 10 faces and they will be this shape and that shape, or did it just come to you during the time they were recording the program?
No. Well, I remember exactly what happened. I once had a keychain which was like a bath plug. It was flexible. And you play with the thing, you know, and you make little shapes with it. So when we were doing something about flexibility, and I wanted to make faces, I thought this is the ideal thing to do it with. I mean, you could have used paper clips or joined together if you wanted to and use that. But I remember when we were in the studio and they had the cameras on there and I was making these faces, I said, let me just go on, because if something occurs to me while it's happening, you know, let it happen. Might be a nice mistake. Hello. Searching for, in fact, have already found bathroom plug chains, because I want to present to you what I understand today is termed a low profile. And let's face it, I'll bet you have never seen anything quite as low as that profile. Now, what can we do with that? Make him into a highbrow? What else? The Duke of Wellington. No, not with a chin like that. Much stronger. The Iron Duke. Yes, that's better. Pinocchio. A rather unhappy man. Much happier man. Washing up liquid. And if you haven't seen it in that sort of plastic bottle before, it's because I put the washing up liquid into this, makes it easier to use. Right, light-coloured card and a little pattern with the washing up liquid. Now for some spray. I think that's enough of that colour. A little bit more washing up liquid. Continue the pattern a little. Now another coloured spray. This spray, incidentally, is the stuff that you use to touch up motor cars, about the cheapest you can get. And That'll do for that. Now I'm going to take it over to the sink. Under the tap to wash off the washing up liquid. So much washing in our talk today. Lovely. And there we are.
Lovely. And the bonus there of washing up liquid and spray paint and a design that I suppose anybody could do with everyday objects.
Glad you mentioned that.
That's important to you.
It's absolutely important. You see, quite a lot of children say, I can't draw. They can, you know, but sometimes they think they can't. And they would prefer to make an abstract picture like that, and that's a wonderful way of doing it. I mean, nature plays its part. You saw that canister that I had, and you just allowed
the pattern to take shape?
Almost by a little bit of man and quite a lot of nature.
Do you like to encourage your viewers to raid the kitchen for things?
Well, I have encouraged them to raid the kitchen, but I have to say there has been trouble. You know, a lot of mess has been made, and mums get a bit excited about it.
And they tell you about it?
They tell me all about it. But there are such interesting things everywhere to find.
Do you like action painting?
Oh, great fun. Tremendous fun. Never know what the action is, the actual painting or the people who are doing it.
Because we've got a smashing example coming up of you actually participating in a bit of action painting. And we think about people riding bikes and smashing bicycle chains on the canvas and everything. We've got you doing it. Fireworks. Fireworks are a marvellous subject for that, I should think, aren't they?
Oh, terrific. I mean, look at the giraffe. Supposing you have a firework here, ready to go off. Light the blue touch paper. Whoosh, whoosh, and then star after star after star bursting in the air. Give the giraffe one too.
Let's see your firework display on the floor of the studio. tremendous. You must have been exhausted after
Yes. Did you notice the trousers? That was the best action painting of the lot.
Sliding about. Now, will you do us a great kindness for our Windmill programme?
You asked me so. Yes, of course I will. And we'll do it in pastels, shall we? You know, to get away from the bold line of the marker.
Absolutely.
Okay, here we go then. I love it when the stuff does that. You have to go.
Missed.
I missed you. This may all seem a little odd at the moment.
It's taking shape.
Yes.
Well, Tony Hart, thank you very much for being our guest on Windmill today. It's been a lot of fun.
Tremendous fun, Chris. Lovely looking back, wasn't it?
Right. Well, while Tony's creating a windmill for us, and we'll probably hang the finished picture here in our windmill room, it's time to say goodbye till next time. We'll come back to see Tony's finished product in a moment, but here's an example of the sheer pulling power of art. It's from Only Fools and Horses. Rodney has got it all organized. An empty house, a candlelit dinner, a glass of wine, and a great feeling, or so he thinks, for the aesthetic and beautiful things in life, and a bit of art as well.
Magic moments from animal programmes are featured in Windmill at the slightly later time of 12:15 next Sunday. Michael Parkinson comes up with some interesting excerpts from the BBC's sound archives on Radio 4 at 12:27 on Tuesday. This is BBC